They killed their prophets, which is still recorded in the Old Testament till this day. They spread lies about the prophets. If we read the stories of the Old Testament today, the descriptions which are contained in it about the prophets of God, those who God chose to be righteous guides to humankind, they have turned them into the most corrupt, evil, sick elements of society. They're described in terms which we wouldn't want to be associated with. These are the prophets. And these are the lies about the prophets, told by those who had knowledge of the prophets. So, when Allah has informed us about this state of affairs, it is not for Muslims to point the finger at the Jews and say, well, you all didn't act according to that knowledge, so God has cursed you. It is about realizing that we will enter into the same state if we do not act in accordance with the knowledge that we have. If we do not convey that knowledge, as the Jews made their religion a private organization, not welcoming members, a private club. We have, to some degree amongst Muslims today, the same kind of attitude, where Muslims will live amongst non-Muslims. They will have classmates, workmates, etc. who are non-Muslims, and they will never say a single word about Islam to them. Such a state is a cursed state, as we will see when we look at some of the various conditions of people on that day. But specifically in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stated with regards to such who would hide that knowledge, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالْهُدَى مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا بَيَّنَّاهُ لِلنَّاسِ فِي الْكِتَابِ أُولَٰئِكَ يَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّاعِنُونَ. Indeed, those who hide the clear messages after it has been revealed to them in the scriptures, such are cursed by God, cursed by Allah, and cursed by all who would curse. So the knowledge that we have, we will be asked about. What did we do with it? Did we apply it? Did we convey it? And the wealth that we have, how did we earn it? So many Muslims today earn their wealth through haram means, forbidden means. They work in companies, organizations, etc., whose goals are forbidden in Islam. And they have found justifications for it. However, on the day of judgment, those justifications will not be accepted. And our bodies and how we use them. Did we use them and abuse them? Or did we use what Allah had given us to aid us in worshipping Him and to convey His message and to live according to the life which He has prescribed? After this, after people have been questioned about these matters, we will find that those who are disbelievers will face a series of humiliations. Actually, the humiliation begins with the point of their resurrection. Because from the time that they're standing there, as I mentioned earlier, when they are clothed, they will be clothed in an evil clothing. Furthermore, the Prophet ﷺ explained that the sun will be brought close to people to a distance of approximately a mile. And it It will cause everyone to sweat. And the people will sweat according to their deeds. Those who have many good deeds and the sweat, and few evil deeds, the sweat would only be up to their ankles. Others with less would be up to their knees. Others will be drowning in their sweat. And at this time, you will find a variety of arguments taking place between those who worshipped false gods and the false gods that they worshipped. These are described in the Quran. Between those who were led by deviant leaders, they will argue with them. They will argue, the weak will argue against their rulers. And the disbelievers will argue against Satan. But there will be no way out. Satan, for example, will say to those disbelievers who argue against him, why did you send us astray, etc. He will say, ما كان لي عليكم من سلطان إلا أن دعوتكم فاستجبتم لي. I had no power over you. I only called you and you responded. Even the body parts will bear witness against their owners, and there will be arguments between the human being and his own body parts, as Allah describes in the chapter Fussilat. حتى إذا جاءوها شهد عليهم سمعهم وأبصارهم وجلودهم بما كانوا يعملون. When they reach this state, their hearing, their sight, and their skins will bear witness against them with regards to what deeds they did. And the people will say, وَقَالُوا لِجُلُودِهِمْ لِمَا شَهِدْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا. They will say to their own skins, why are you bearing witness against us? And they will say, قَالُوا أَنْتَقَنَا اللَّهُ الَّذِي أَنْتَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. The one, Allah, who made everything speak, has made us speak. And those who are disobedient believers, those who didn't pay zakah, who didn't pay the compulsory charity, will find their sides, foreheads, and necks and backs branded repeatedly with fire on a day which is like 50,000 years, as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ described it, and they will continue in that state until the judgment ends. And those who are proud will be raised up. When they're first raised up along with everybody, they will be raised up the size of a seed of corn and humiliated. Those who are rich will be raised up in a state of degradation. Their riches will be of no benefit to them. Those who are cheaters, who cheated others and took their wealth, will find fire in their stomachs on the day of judgment. As the Prophet ﷺ said, know that whatever of your brother's wealth that you take, it will be fire in your stomachs on the day of judgment. The rich beggar, one who has means but he goes out and begs, he will find himself on that day without any skin on his face. And those, on the other hand, who are pious, they will be free from fear. Because on this time, at this point, when people are raised up, people will be in a state of absolute fear. As Allah describes in the Quran, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ. On that day, a man will run from his brother, وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ, and from his father and mother, وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ, and from his wife or partner, meaning husband, and his children. On that day, when everybody will be scared silly, those who are pious will be spared that fear. And there will be those in the shade of Allah's throne. The Prophet ﷺ described them as those who are young, who grew up worshipping Allah, those whose hearts were attached to the mosques, those who remembered Allah privately and their eyes became filled with tears, those who gave in charity in such a way that no one knew that they gave in charity, etc. And those who were martyrs, and those who controlled their anger, those who freed believing slaves, and those who called the adhan, and a variety of other righteous deeds. They will find with them on that day a special status where Allah will alleviate from them some of the trials of that time. Furthermore, following this state, people will be gathered. They will be gathered together and driven on towards the judgment. Intercession will take place prior to the actual moving from that initial state. People will run to the various prophets, and Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, will be the one to intercede on their behalf to start the process of moving forward for the judgment. And on that day there will be a variety of types of intercession. But of course, no intercession will take place except that which Allah has permitted to take place. The people will be moved forth for the judgment, and the judgment of their deeds will take place according to 5 basic principles. 1, absolute justice, that no one will be oppressed in any way. 2, no one will be held accountable for the sins of others. However, some will carry the sins of them, their own sins, along with the sins of others. Not that they are accountable for the sins of others, but that they pointed others on an evil way. As the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said, whoever starts an evil way, a sunnah sayyi'ah, that individual will receive the sin of having started that way, as well as the sin of everyone who goes down that path until the last day. But it will not reduce the sin of those who have taken that path. It will be additional sin on themselves. But of course, Allah is most merciful and He's just, so that those who start a good way, likewise they will get the reward of everyone who goes down that path, without decreasing their reward in the least. It will be added to them. And God's grace will be manifest in the 4th way, or in the 3rd way, that the good deeds will be multiplied. All good deeds done will be multiplied 10 times to hundreds of times, whereas evil deeds will only be held as 1. This is the grace of God among His creatures. And people will see all of their deeds. This is among the principles. No one will be tried, will be judged, without having seen the deeds that they have done. So no one will have an argument against God. I didn't do this. I didn't know. Somebody told me to do it and I really didn't know better. All of the type of arguments that we make up for committing sins, committing evil. When we see our deeds before us, we will not be able to raise any such arguments, because the reality will be very clear. These are choices that we have made, and we now will be responsible for them. Fifthly,